Another man who will be working this weekend alongside Frankie Edgar is one of the very best in the game, my good pal Brian Stann, who joins us right now via the magic of Skype. There he is. Brian, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. We have a lot to talk about as it pertains to this weekend, but first I got to ask you about your colleague, fellow middleweight, guy who you fought not that long ago, Michael Bisping. He gets over the hump. Did you think he did enough to win that fight?
I absolutely think he did enough to win that fight. And it's interesting because, I kind of went into some detail there on Twitter.
Yes.
And, what people have to realize, and some people are getting mad at me for doing so, but there's a lot of new fans to this sport. And so I don't know if someone on Twitter has been watching mixed martial arts for years or if they've been watching it for months. And so I had to go and explain what is a 10-8 round and why round 3, in my opinion, was nowhere near a 10-8 round.
Thank you.
For Anderson Silva. But I clearly thought that Michael Bisping won rounds 1, 2, and 4.
Yes.
And I think that while a lot of people are criticizing Anderson Silva for his taunting and his antics, they definitely did hurt him, because while he's doing that, Michael's landing punches and scoring points with the judges. But in the past, those antics helped Anderson. Anderson was quicker when he was younger, and his counter strikes were quicker. And when Michael didn't go all the way into the pocket with him on those, Anderson tried to counter, and there's a lot of punches in that fight that Anderson just missed. They came right to the edge here and just missed Michael Bisping. And Michael had very good head movement. He was very well prepared for that fight, and I thought he got a very deserving win. And I never thought I'd see the day where people tell me I'm being biased towards Michael Bisping. Never thought I'd see that. I think Anderson is awesome. I've always been a fan, and the very few personal interactions I've ever had with Anderson Silva, I can tell you, he has been nothing but class to me and nothing but very, very kind. So I respect him very much, but he lost that fight.
Okay, so for the uninformed, I'm happy you brought this up. We didn't have time to do so with Mark at the top of the show. Why, and I agree with you 1,000%, why wasn't the third round a 10-8 round for Anderson Silva in your opinion?
Because in mixed martial arts, a 10-8 round is a dominant round where you almost completely not only neutralize your opponent, but you do a lot of damage and you score a lot of points. But the entire round for 5 straight minutes is basically a beatdown. You can't just have one flying knee, severely hurt someone, almost knock them out, and think that that is a 10-8 round. And what happens is it's very confusing, because in boxing, that would have been a 10-8 round. If you get a knockdown, it ends up being a 10-8 round. And so that's what people are misinformed about, is a 10-8 round is an extraordinarily dominant round. You don't even have to near finish them, but you do have to absolutely dominate them. Gray Maynard versus Frankie Edgar, there was a 10-8 round there. When I fought Phil Davis, the second round was a 10-8 round in that fight. So, I mean, there's good examples of them, and that was not it. Because up until that knee, you could argue Michael was winning that round too.
Yeah, 100%. People, I think, get confused because we use a boxing model, but the round is not scored like boxing. One knockdown doesn't equal a 10-8. What do you think about Herb Dean's decision to not stop the fight there, let it continue despite the knockdown?
Well, it was obviously a good decision. I think Michael was still coherent. He was able to still talk to Herb Dean. I think it was a good call. The whole mouthpiece thing, I have not watched the fight a second time. I did feel, when Mike first lost the mouthpiece and he looked at the referee, that was a mistake on Mike's part.
Agreed.
Anderson jumped on him exactly like he should jump on him, and Herb Dean cannot stop the fight while the other fighter is engaged and getting hit to put a mouthpiece in. So Herb did a good job not stopping it there. I did feel like there was a slight break in the action. After the first flurry Anderson landed, they separated. Mike had time to look back at Herb Dean again. Mike should not have done that. That's a mistake on Mike's part. But I thought that was a moment where Herb Dean could have gone in and grabbed the mouthpiece. Because I will tell you, when you do not have a mouthpiece in, it is far easier to get knocked out. Regardless of that, when he hit him with that knee, Mike was immediately arguing to Herb Dean. He was not out. He was not unconscious. He was definitely hurt. He could have been knocked out. And Anderson's decision not to jump on him in round 4 cost him dearly.
Last thing on this fight, and then we transition to this weekend. If you're the UFC brass, do you finally give Michael Bisping the title shot, or does he have to win at least one more?
No, I think he's earned the title shot. I mean, look, middleweight is a little thin right now.
Yep.
You're not going to get much better than a victory over Anderson Silva. Depending on what happens with Jacare obviously coming up next. Look, some of the things they look for in guys to fight in titles are guys that can sell tickets, guys that can sell a fight. If Michael Bisping has done anything over the years, I mean, he has taught other guys like Conor McGregor how to sell fights, how to make every fight personal and sell out arenas. He does very well there. So I don't think the winner, Luke Rockhold, Chris Weidman, I mean, they could do a lot worse than defending that title against a Michael Bisping. They could sell a lot less pay-per-views with another name. I don't think it sells as much. I don't think Jacare versus Rockhold or Jacare versus Weidman sells as much as them versus Bisping.
And that is a perfect transition to this weekend, because the UFC has had to make a habit out of, making lemonade out of lemons. They have the history fight. They have all that stuff. They got RDA versus Conor. It's a great fight. He's moving up. He's trying to make history. It's no longer available. RDA breaks his foot. And now they have the pick of the litter. They have Anthony Pettis asking for the fight. They have Donald Cerrone. Of course, Frankie Edgar unavailable, but there was a long list of people who wanted this fight. They settle on Nate Diaz. Did they make the right call in your opinion?
Yeah, they did. They did. And as much as I'd be intrigued to see Donald Cerrone, who was in shape to sell the fight, there was more noise from the fans that wanted to see Nate Diaz take the fight. And they spent more money to get Nate Diaz. I think Donald Cerrone was willing to fight him for less. They had to spend more money to get who the fans ultimately wanted to see. And Nate Diaz did himself a lot of favors by going on Fox and having an expletive-filled post-fight speech to call out Conor McGregor. And that's just fact. I mean, these Diaz brothers have a massive, massive following, and they deserve it. They've been in the sport for a long time. They've won an awful lot of fights. And again, different than Michael Bisping does, they find a way, though, to make every fight personal, to sell every fight and make people want to see them fight. So I think they made the right decision. While I'd love to see other guys get a shot at this kid, I do think that Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor sells the most.
What Conor is doing is unprecedented. He's moving up 25 pounds. Is this a mistake? I remember when Roy Jones moved up to heavyweight, he was never able to get back to his old self. Yes, he made history that night, but it felt like he put on too much on his body, and it was tough to keep going up and down. Is this going to be a mistake for Conor? Should he not be jumping up so much?
Not with Nate Diaz. So Nate Diaz tried to run at 170 pounds. We all remember he was not a natural 170 pounder. Just because you wake up at the weight or you got to cut a little bit of weight to make it doesn't mean that's where you belong. Nate Diaz is most effective at 155 pounds, which is not a big jump for Conor. It's a more natural weight for Conor than 145 is. So this is not a mistake. If Conor tries to jump up and fight somebody like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, that's a mistake. That's a big guy at 170 who is a real 170 pounder. That's legitimately jumping up 2 weight classes. Nate Diaz is fighting him at 170 just because he doesn't have the time to cut the weight to get to 155 pounds and be effective.
What do you think of the mind games being played up until this point? It was agreed upon that they'd fight at 165. 11th hour, Conor says, let him get comfortable. Let's fight at 170. And then we have the press conference, and you saw what happened there. I know you were watching live. Do you think that Conor has the early edge in that regard going into this week?
He does. Anytime an opponent even hints at the slightest acceptance of defeat, it brings them only a step away from its reality. And Nate Diaz made 2 comments in there where I thought there was a little bit of acceptance, a little bit of him leaving himself a back door there. And look, he's got a point. Coming in on short notice against a fighter this kid's caliber, and with Nate Diaz's style is really dependent on elite level cardio. So, but him saying, look, it's kill or be killed for me in this fight. It's kill or be killed. That tells you right there, he's already kind of accepted in his mind, hey, look, if I got to get knocked out and put on a show, I'm willing to accept that. You don't hear that from Nate Diaz when he's had full time prepare for a fight and he's confident, he's bringing all of his weapons in the octagon. This is a Nate Diaz who, in my mind, is either playing possum or at that moment in time thought to himself, I'm not at my best and I've got to make do with what I've got to make this money right now in this big fight.
I thought Conor was giving us some insight into what he's going to do on Saturday when he kept talking about Nate's body and how he's soft in the body, and it seemed like that's what he's going to attack. He's going to attack the body, the long frame of Nate Diaz. Do you agree? Is that his best path to victory?
It's the easiest thing in the onset of the fight because it's always the hardest thing to overcome, in my opinion, in striking is reach. Speed is number 2. But overcoming reach is really, really difficult. And this is the first time where Conor McGregor is going to fight a guy who's longer than him. So it's easier to hit guys that are longer than you to the legs and to the body. Because most people's natural inclination when you punch at them is to lean back. They leave the body and the legs exposed. And we have seen Nate Diaz's legs get chopped up repeatedly. And I think over time, though, Conor will work his way inside. And Conor isn't used to always being the quicker guy. Conor is exceptional in a lot of areas. He's got great power. He's got excellent balance, footwork, flexibility. Those are a lot of gifts you don't see a lot of fighters have, all of those. One thing that I think he's very good at, but he's not exceptional at, is quickness. But in this fight, he will be the quicker athlete. Nate Diaz tends to, when he really extends on his punches, he's very long and there's a lot of volume. But because he stands so heavy on that lead leg, it takes him a long time to retract those punches. And I think what you're going to see is Conor's going to look to counter a little bit more, and he's going to try to follow Nate Diaz's hand, specifically his jab. When he puts that jab out there, he's going to try and follow that jab back with his left hand, arch it a little bit with an overhand, and bring it back and beat that hand back to the chin. I think he's going to look to do that because you could see when he fought Michael Johnson, early in the fight, Nate Diaz didn't establish his range yet. He got a little too close to Mike. He would throw that 1-2 and land, but he would take 2 as well. Michael Johnson was quicker than him, was able to get there. Round 2, Nate was able to back up a little bit. It caused him to miss a little bit, but it also caused him to land. And then when he sit back, Michael Johnson couldn't hit him. The punches came right to about here over and over again. Conor's going to be in better shape. It's going to be hard for Nate to put that volume on him, and Conor's going to get inside, and I think he's going to look for those keys to beat those hands back to Nate Diaz's face.
Fascinating. Great breakdown there. RDA had tremendous success attacking that lead leg of Nate Diaz when they fought around a year ago. Do you think Conor is going to try to do the same?
Yeah, I mean, he's a smart guy. He's got a high key.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to. When someone gives it to you, you're silly not to take it. I think it would be really smart, Nate, turning the tables around, thinking to himself, if I'm Conor, what would I do to me?
Yeah.
Right? And stick a knee right in Conor's shin from the onset. Try to hurt, because I'll tell you what, when people see kicks get checked in a fight, when you take a really good check to your shin, you saw it with Anderson Silva, his leg broke. It hurts immediately. It's very difficult even for adrenaline to carry through you. It limits the amount of times you use that weapon. Jose Aldo had one kick checked against Korean Zombie, did not kick again until he threw a high kick when he realized the shoulder was out of the socket. So I think he can maybe limit some of his weapons, knowing, hey, he's going to kick my leg. I'm going to use it to either catch the kick and take him down, or I want to check it and try and hurt his shin.
You are the master of breaking down tape. So let's say I appoint you head coach of Nate Diaz. You are going into this fight as his head coach. You're in his corner. What are the holes that you see in Conor's game? And he hasn't showed us a lot. Obviously, he's undefeated. What are you trying to exploit in this fight?
He hasn't. He doesn't necessarily mind getting hit that much, and he's not easy to hit, but he doesn't mind it because his chin is so good. But the real key for Nate is he's got to use his reach. He's got to maximize it. Even if he misses early, he's got to keep his range where Conor can't collapse in on him and hit him and tag him at the end of his punches over and over again, force McGregor to get a little frustrated and explode through the space sloppy. Get desperate to hit him. Get desperate to reach him. When he does that, grab him, clench him, overhook him, look to try and wrap your arm around his head. Do anything you can to create a scramble, because Nate has very sneaky chokes in transition. That's when Nate Diaz will catch you. Nate Diaz catches you in a submission when you start messing around with him in the transitional phase. If Conor gets on top of him, gets established, Conor's good on the ground too. He'll avoid it. But if he can get his arms around his neck, if he can do something, if he gets Conor frustrated, then I think he can maybe create a submission out of nothing. But the big problem is if Nate works too hard, if he goes chasing him too much and he starts to get frustrated, that's going to eat away at his cardio. And especially when we feel like Conor McGregor is going to attack that body early to really test it. He's got a long time to work. He's got 5 rounds. He wants to finish him in 1. So you can guarantee Conor may come out aggressive. Stay relaxed. Stay at the end of your punches. Make him have to explode through the space in a sloppy fashion. Ends up getting hit, ends up getting sloppy, and gets out of his game. Then you start doing some of the Diaz taunting. Then you throw the finger in his face, start pointing and laughing at him, and reverse the tables on Conor. See if you can frustrate him. When Conor can't reach it, he can't hit you, but he's getting tagged over and over again with that jab. Now you get the crowd going on him for once. Instead of everybody cheering for him, how does Conor deal with that? How does he deal with walking back to his corner after round 1 a little bit embarrassed with Nate Diaz standing there like this, with the tongue in the upper lip, doing that number? I mean, that's what I want to see. How does he, if I'm coaching Nate, that's what we got to create. We have to make that scenario happen round 1.
Wow. Just trying to envision these scenes is giving me goosebumps. And lest we forget that the co-main event features Holly Holm, your old friend, fighting against Miesha Tate. What kind of issues, if any, does Miesha bring to the table here? Because a lot of people are writing her off based off of what Holly did, of course, to Ronda Rousey. What kind of a shot do you give Miesha, and what's her path to victory?
Miesha has got to power punch. And here's the biggest key. She has to punch with Holly. And when I say punch with, it's not just counter strike, because Holly is really good. Pop, pop, and gone. I mean, it's really the basis of Mike Winkeljohn's style. He teaches every fighter to hit and be gone, and Holly's his best student. But if she punches, as soon as she sees Holly trying to hit her, accept the fact you're going to get hit and land your own shots at the same time. I think Miesha has the power advantage in this fight. We have seen Miesha throw much heavier. Her boxing has gotten steadily better and better under the tutelage of Robert Follis and their boxing coach, Extreme Couture. She's starting to drop some girls with that right hand. Holly has a lot of time in the ring. She's taken a lot of shots. She's been knocked out before. Miesha's best chance to win this fight isn't shooting takedown or after takedown, getting frustrated, not being able to get Holly down. It's waiting for the right time, punching with her, knocking her down with a punch, then getting on top of her or knocking her out. And in order to do that, she's not quick enough. She's not skilled enough to hit Holly consistently with natural combinations. She's got to pressure and wait. As soon as Holly's going to go, you go as well. Punch with her every single time. Try to catch with that big right hand and drop her.
I tend to believe that Miesha's greatest attribute is just her toughness. Like, she takes big punches, she keeps on going, she doesn't quit. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, she is as tough a fighter as you're going to see. You know, there's a lot. We always talk about the toughness of some of the guys. You know, Chris Liebens. You know, I mean, he's forever going to go. You know, he's a Hall of Famer in terms of toughness in my book. But you get people. You know, on the female side, we've seen it from Paige Van Zandt. The girl can take a beating and just keeps going. Miesha Tate, she doesn't even get warmed up until you beat her up a little bit. I mean, it's really fun to watch. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for Miesha when she goes in there and she gets it done that way. The uglier she can make a fight, the better Miesha Tate gets. Robert Follis has definitely brought more strategy, more tactics to her game. And when you combine that with her toughness, you have a much more capable and effective fighter.
We'll be talking to Holly in a bit, but I'm curious to get your take on this because you know her so well. Like, leading up to the Ronda fight, she talked about how emotional it was. Sometimes she would break down. There was a lot at stake there, a lot on her shoulders. And yes, she had fought in big fights in boxing, but never before like this, and in particular in MMA. Do you feel like now that she's, you know, the bantamweight queen, she's the one who slayed the dragon, she's getting a lot more attention, that she continues to feel that pressure? Or now that she's the champ, she can settle in and do her thing? She showed us her cards. You know, it's a different scenario now. She's the favorite. We're expecting her to win. You know what I mean? How do you think she's going to handle that?
You know, from what I know about her, I think she's going to handle it well. But you're absolutely right. It's easier when you're the hungry person that has the targets on the other person's back. She's lived in the limelight. Now she's got to deal with all the media. Miesha Tate comes with her bag over her shoulder and her blue collar, her hard hat on, you know, to the MGM to take this fight. And she's watching that queen get all the attention, everything she wants. It does make it more difficult, but Holly is a smart enough girl to know that. And Mike Winkeljohn's a smart enough coach to know that. I mean, he kind of game plans against it. I remember him, you know, when I started to rise a little bit, you know, he'll say things to make sure that your head doesn't get big. You know, hey, Mr. Stan, we running tomorrow? Or are you hitting this? Or are you doing this? And you know, Holly's just been there before. And the other thing that Holly has that makes it very fortunate, in Albuquerque, she has an incredible support network. Her brothers, her father, her closest friends that have been with her forever. They were there when she got knocked out. They're there with her now that she's the queen of the bantamweight division. And so I got to think that support network has done a really good job of making sure she's focused and understands now, you know, what is at stake for Holly. Now what's at stake is, hey, how many fights can I win? How can I really set my family up for success for years? Because she's making the kind of money now to where Holly Holm doesn't have to do a whole lot, you know, a few years from now for the rest of her life.
Unbelievable. What great insight. You can hear more of it, of course, this weekend on FS1. You'll be working alongside Frankie Edgar and Dominic Cruz, right? He's the third man. So that's a tremendous trio there. Jay Glazer hosting. I'll be in the back. For you, I know you love calling the fights. I know you love being the color analyst. But now that you're retired, and I saw you training. I saw that picture of you. Are we making a comeback with the Lima brothers? What's going on over there? That's just for fun?
Look, I mean, I'll admit it, every single day Every single day when I put my headphones on and I work out, I envision fighting again. I do it every single day, and it's tough. But the sport's changed. I'm 35. My body is not the same as it was 2 years ago, let alone 4 or 5 years ago. And it's tough. It's a really difficult transition for all fighters to walk away and accept it and now turn that focus towards something else. But for me, I have to kind of revert and pretend every once in a while when I work out. It keeps my sanity, keeps me hungry. But there's no comeback for me. It would not be in the best interest of my career or certainly my family. It would be entirely selfish. If I were to come back now, it would be totally just for Brian Stann, and I can't do that.
But that being said, big weekend like this, it'll be buzzing in Las Vegas. Do you get some of that release? Does it feel? I know you're not fighting, and it's not the same. You don't get that same sort of adrenaline rush. But does it do you get it's Monday now? You're thinking I'm going to Vegas. Do you get excited for this?
Absolutely, I absolutely do. I get excited because the coolest part, it's not as much when I'm on the desk, but the cool thing about being on the desk is we get to interview the guys afterwards.
Yeah.
You're literally in a position where previous jobs I've had, there were days where I saw nightmares come true. In this job, every single time I call fights or get to be on the desk, I get to be a witness and get to see someone achieve a dream. And I get to, you get to hear fans who off that performance now feel like they can go achieve their own dreams, no matter how big or small. And I just don't take those opportunities for granted. I mean, it's so cool when you get to see someone who just did something unique. You just did something special, and it meant the world to them. They put all the work into it. And you get to actually be there, see it firsthand. You get to see them afterwards and get all that inspiration. I can take it home to my family, take it home to my company and all the different things I want to do. And I mean, that's really special when you get to be a part of that. On the flip side, I also have to see all the fighters that had a rough night. And I've been there before, and I try to do my best when I talk to them to let them know that in this sport, you can't get too high, you can't get too low. And I mean, for me, I was almost, I was on the edge of getting cut. And a year later, I was top 10 in the world. That's how fast things can swing in mixed martial arts. When you work at it, you see where you're weak, you go address it, you work really hard, you find the right people to help you get where you want to be. And you can absolutely climb the ranks and see those positive nights too.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, Holly Holm made her UFC debut a year ago yesterday, and now here she is, one of the biggest names in the sport.
Remember when she made her debut? Yeah. Everybody said she's terrible.
Yeah.
They did this big article on how her technique was terrible.
Right.
All these other things, and now look at her. She's a millionaire. Yep. She's on top of the world, and I will tell you, of all the athletes in this sport I've ever been around, I've been around some really fine people. I don't believe I've ever met someone with the character of Holly Holm. And I mean, I have nothing against Ronda Rousey or anybody else in UFC, but it's different. Holly is a different individual. Holly's the type of person when you're around her, you want to be better. She deserves and has earned all the success she's got.
Great insight as always, Brian. Looking forward to working with you. Again, catch Brian, the rest of the team, FS1 all weekend long, live from Las Vegas. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you, Brian.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, there he is, Brian Stann, stopping by, one of the very best minds in the game. Great to get his insight, as always, breaking everything down for this weekend.